Hello, you lovely lot. I'm back with a video today to celebrate Pride Month. Pride Month is really there to raise awareness about the issues that still happen in the workplace and beyond when it comes to sexuality, discrimination and harassment. So what I really want to focus on is, first of all, what type of discrimination could occur if you identify as LGBTQ+, and also thinking about the different types of initiatives that employers can run to make a more inclusive workplace, or to create a workplace where people can show up as their true self, but also where they feel they can call out discrimination if they see it or experience it. So first of all, let's start with the different types of discrimination. So first fun fact, sexual orientation is one of the 9 protected characteristics when it comes to protection from discrimination. So those people who are heterosexual or bisexual or have a different sexuality are all protected under the heading of sexual orientation. There's also gender reassignment, which is also a protected characteristic. So again, just thinking about which protected characteristic it might fall under, depending on the act or behaviour that's occurred in the workplace. It may also come under sex as well. So again, thinking about whether or not that is applicable to the particular act of discrimination that's occurred. So have a look at the Equality Act for that. There's various different relevant sections which we'll put here. But if you've got any other questions, just reach out and let's dive into the actual types of discrimination that could occur and then focus on how we might deal with those. So direct discrimination is set out in section 13 of the Equality Act. And this is where it's usually more overt, it's direct, it says it in the name, but essentially it's where someone is treated less favourably because of a protected characteristic. So that could be because of their sexual orientation, because of the fact that they're transitioning, they might be misgendered. So think about the way in which it manifests, and it has to be directly because of that protected characteristic. So it's often, in my experience, that as an employment lawyer, it's the less likely type of claim that will arise. So often these things are more nuanced, but it's there to show that that individual should not be treated less favourably because of that particular protected characteristic. So that's the first one, that's section 13 of the Equality Act, and that's direct discrimination. Indirect discrimination is different. Obviously, it's indirect. There's no intention to create any hostile environment or be offensive or to treat anybody less favourably. But what happens is there's a provision, criterion or practice, and that places the person who has a protected characteristic, whether that's sexual orientation or otherwise, at a substantial disadvantage. And it does so because it applies equally to everybody, but places that individual at a substantial disadvantage. One example might be a policy that's in place that says that everybody gets a day off for their wedding, and that wedding is defined as same-sex marriage. Obviously, that would place those people who have same-sex marriage at a disadvantage. That was in section 19 of the Equality Act, and again, that's indirect discrimination, where there's a provision, criterion or practice that is put in place for everybody, applies equally to everybody, but places the individual with the protected characteristic at a substantial disadvantage. So the next type of discrimination, which I actually think is the most common in practice, is harassment. So that's under section 20. Section 20 of the Equality Act sets out what harassment is, and it's helpful to have a look at that. So I'll bring that up on the screen here so you can have a look. But essentially what it's saying is that there's some form of behaviour, words or conduct that has created an environment that's hostile, degrading, upsetting, embarrassing, all of those thoughts and feelings. It has to create that environment, and it has to have had the purpose or effect of creating that environment. So it doesn't mean that the person had to intend for it to be that way, but it has to have created that environment for that individual. So an example of that might be name calling, might be misgendering, and it's done in a way that is because of a protected characteristic, and then has the purpose or effect of creating the environment that we've just talked about. So what about employers? I mean, employers should be looking at creating like an inclusive workplace where people can show up as their true self. But I think a lot of the issues arise in that, you know, there's recruitment around, we want a diverse workforce, but then there's no inclusion behind that. So people can't show up as their true self. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to run through now where employers can really think about how they might be a more inclusive workplace. Also thinking about, you know, if discrimination happens at work, do people actually raise it, or do you need like an anonymous line where people can email or contact to raise these issues anonymously so that they are addressed without any risk of repercussions for that individual, because that's often how people feel, is that if I raise this, it's going to be used against me. And the reality is it's not, but some people still feel that they would rather not raise something and deal with the discrimination on a day-to-day basis rather than address it because they're worried of what might happen to them as well. So let's just dive into a couple of initiatives that I think could be really helpful for you as an employer and your management team. Once you've built the foundations and you've got your policies and your training sorted and there's a general level of awareness, it's then important to continue to build on that. Don't just stop there. Put reviews in place for both training and policies, but create a network. That network can then feed into your approach. It can also give you some live feedback as to whether or not that stuff is working and what more needs to be done in this space. So get that network set up. That's a staff network of individuals who aren't even in management, and getting them to feed back to the management team around these issues so that you've got people on the ground telling you what's working and what's not. But, you know, there's always people like myself who are allies, you know, looking at those people who are passionate about diversity and inclusion. Can they be an ally? What can they do to help? Can they help grow the networks? Can they help support calling out this discrimination that might be happening, even where it's more nuanced, and to try and allow people then to show up as their true selves, because you're not only getting those people together who share the same protected characteristics, but showing that there are allies within the workplace for them to open up to. So one of the things I get asked a lot is, why do you have your pronouns on your email signature? Why do you have your pronouns on your LinkedIn and your Instagram? And really the reason for that is twofold. One is to show that I'm an ally and to raise awareness of the importance of not assuming what somebody's gender is, but also to allow other people to feel more comfortable about stating their pronouns, where, you know, they feel they have to state their pronoun because it's not obvious or someone has assumed it incorrectly. So really important thing that you could do within the workplace is to open that conversation up, create a pronouns policy and encourage people to share their pronouns publicly, so that those people who are less confident in sharing their pronouns do open up, and they feel that they can do that because everybody else is normalising that conversation. So that's another initiative that employers could run. But even if your employer doesn't run that, you can still do it on your social media to show that you're an ally and you understand why it's important to share our pronouns. Another thing kind of leading on from pronouns is looking at like gender neutral language. So when you do your policies and your processes and all of the stuff that you'll do in terms of workplace initiatives, is it clear that this is gender neutral, or is there something specific to one particular gender, and does it need to be that way? So really consider the words and the language that you use when it comes to gender, and see whether or not that is actually appropriate for what you're trying to achieve. So one final tip that I've got for you is to consider, if you're an employer, are you able, especially now people are going back to the workplace, to create a unisex toilet? This will really help those people who identify as non-binary or who are transitioning not to have the conversations about what toilet to use. So think about what else you can do on awareness days. And, you know, awareness days are great, but let's not just stop here. Let's not have Pride Month and not talk about these important rights moving forward. Let's see how we can identify throughout the year other awareness days to help us bring this to the forefront. But also let's think about the language that we use. Let's think about how we can call things out if we see discrimination occurring, and let's just be active in our mindset around what discrimination might look like in the workplace, and try to support those individuals who you see might be suffering. I really hope this has helped. Lots of helpful tips are also below in the comment section, and I've put all of the links to the relevant sections of law as well for any of you boffins that want to have a little read. But please do share any tips or any advice that you've got relating to any of the stuff that I've posted today, and there'll be more videos coming of this nature in due course. So thank you, like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you lovely people very, very soon.